You're listening to the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast, the leading resource for real estate investors who want to dominate their market online. Dan Barrett is the founder of AdWords Nerds, a high-tech digital agency focusing exclusively on helping real estate investors like you get more leads and deals online, outsmart your competition, and live a freer, more awesome life. And now, your host, Dan Barrett.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the REI Marketing Nerds Podcast. As always, this is Daniel Barrett here from AdWordsNerds.com. Hope you are doing awesome. Hope you are feeling good as we head into 2020. And this week, I've got a really fun interview with Ryan Substand. Now, Ryan and I first met in my coaching program, the Search, Click, Convert Bootcamp. Ryan went through there to learn Google Ads for his investing business, had a really successful time, and then came into my long-term coaching program, which is called the REI Marketing Mastery Program. And he is just a really impressive guy. He is not only running a successful investing business, he's balancing that with a full-time job as an engineer and a growing young family. And so I wanted to talk to Ryan, not only about the kind of marketing that he's doing and the kind of mindset of engineering that he brings to the work that he does, but also just how he balances all of that. Because I don't know about you, but, increasingly for me, not only just getting the most out of my business, that's obviously very important to me, but I also think a lot about how am I balancing that with the other priorities in my life. And I just wanted to see how Ryan does that because he has got a lot going on. So without any further ado, let's get into my conversation with Ryan Substand. All right, everybody, this is Daniel Barrett, and I'm here with Ryan Substand. He is a real estate investor in the Seattle and surrounding areas. I would say if you're familiar with Seattle, which I'm not, but if you are familiar with the Seattle area, that's South King County and Pierce County. Ryan, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So let's get started the way I usually like to, which is just tell me how you got started in real estate and in real estate investing. What was your into this weird world we're part of?
Yeah, so I have a full-time job. I work for Boeing as an engineer. A couple of years ago, my wife and I and our 2-month-old went on a business trip to Japan for 4 months. It was kind of at the beginning of the trip while we were there that I was thinking, I don't know if I really want to do engineering, sit behind a desk for 40 more years and then retire. And so I thought, what can I do that I can kind of work for myself, I guess. So I did some research online, found a couple different options, but one of the main things that caught my eye was flipping houses. So that's kind of where I got into it. And so I did a bunch of research. I had a train ride into work every day in Japan. And so I was reading books both ways and took in a lot of information. And then we got back to Seattle. Seattle's a pretty expensive market. Houses are pretty expensive around here. So I thought, I'm originally from Minnesota. So I thought, my wife and I actually are. So we thought, let's move back to Minnesota and then we can get started there where things are a little cheaper. But things weren't working out to get back to Minnesota. So I decided to jump in here. And that's kind of how I got started.
So that's interesting. So there's a couple of things that jump out at me about that story, but I'm curious. I don't want to lose the thread before I forget about it, which I forget about everything. So I feel like that's pretty inevitable. So what do you feel like you have taken much from the engineering part of your life into the investing part of your life? Because it strikes me that the two, there's like a certain kind of thinking and a certain kind of mindset in engineering, from what I understand, that I think it could be really useful in investing. And I'm wondering if you feel or if you have felt the same way.
Yeah. So I'd say a little bit. I'd say definitely on the numbers analyzing side. That's kind of one of my strengths as far as running numbers. It can also hinder me in times with over analyzing things, but it's definitely transferred over. I'd say the analyzing portion of it mostly.
Yeah. It's, he said, you overanalyze things. My immediate response was, well, I've never had that problem, Ryan. I don't know what you're talking about. As I painfully overanalyze literally everything in my life. So yeah, totally get it. Well, okay. So, and I'm also curious about your experience in Japan. I lived in Japan for a little while when I was in school. It's a very different kind of world. So was that like kind of like a first for you, or is that kind of thing you guys had done before?
So I've traveled for work quite a bit, but it's mostly to like Wichita, Kansas. So it's not the most
Wichita.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
They do have good barbecue there, so I will give them that.
Yeah, for sure. So what did you take anything away from that Japan experience? I mean, obviously it was a formative moment kind of for getting you into real estate. What was your take on that? It seems interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a different culture over there for sure. I mean, I love the mass transportation there, very on schedule. And I didn't know much of the language really, so it's hard to communicate. We were more in a industrial area, so not so touristy. Mm-hmm. The people in our hotel knew some English, but pretty much everyone else was speaking Japanese. So it was hard to understand and communicate a lot. But I mean, you figure it out with using hand gestures and things like that. My wife met some other expats that were over there with their husbands working for Toyota and Lockheed Martin and things like that. So she had a good experience over there. I worked a lot, so it was hard to get that full Japanese experience. But
yeah, it strikes me as like it's almost like every now and then when I get to travel with the band or I get to travel for music, it's always like people are like, "Oh, like did you get to like see the city?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't see any of the city." You know, I went to do the thing, and then I did the thing, and then I fell asleep. But so that's cool. So I want to make sure. So you are currently also working. You're still working as an engineer now, right? Or did you stop that?
I am. Yep, I still am. So
let's talk about your real estate investing business now, because I want to kind of make sure everyone gets the lay of the land of like what you're doing now. So your website is northwestpropertysolutions.com, right? So that's the site. Everyone can go check it out if they want to see what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about that business and kind of how it's structured right now.
Yeah, so that's kind of my wholesaling business. I send all my marketing through Northwest Property Solutions, and deals come in, and then I have a separate company that's my flipping company. And so I'll keep what I want to flip, and then I'll wholesale what either doesn't work for me or isn't in my area. And so I've kind of done more flips over the last year. It's taken quite a bit of time to do that. It's turned out pretty well overall. I did 4 flips in the year and then a few wholesale deals. So still working on, and this is all part-time again. I also have a 3 and a 1-year-old, so they keep me busy as well.
So all right. So you have 2 full-time jobs and then your business. I get how it is. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and it's just you right now in the business, or do you have anyone that's working with you?
It's just me right now. So,
okay. So, this kind of gets into the kind of next thing that I'm always interested in, because, and I forgot, you've told me before, because we've kind of worked together in the past. I think you were part of one of my coaching programs, right? So, I know you told me before that you had young kids, but I'd forgotten it when we started this podcast. So it makes this question even more kind of impressive to me, because one of the things that really kind of blows me away is the fact that you are juggling, not just your real estate investing business, which has, been, successful, and, you've done a lot of really amazing work. And like you said, you're not just wholesaling, you're also doing flips. You're doing that basically on your own, but you also are working a full-time job that's pretty demanding, and you have a kind of a home life. You're in this like phase of your family life, which is pretty intense. And it's, I have a 5 and a 3-year-old. So I just was there, feels like yesterday. So it's like, I remember that it's pretty chaotic. So how do you go about thinking about dividing those things, or just balancing your various responsibilities? It strikes me as, and I'm sure you're the same, you have the same experience, where you meet people who all they have is one job, and they basically work themselves into an early grave, or they don't have a relationship with their kids, or, whatever, they don't balance those things well. So how do you think about that issue, or how have you come through that and made that work for you?
Yeah. So I haven't done it perfectly.
Right.
But yeah, it's just trying to set aside time for, family's most important over any job. And so making sure that I have that time, I get home from my 9 to 5 job, and then, which for me is a lot earlier. I'm off by 2:30. So it gets me time with the kids and wife before it's too late in the evening. But usually we'll come home and spend some time with the family, and then try to set aside time for real estate related phone calls or whatever that may be, going on appointments and stuff. Weekends tends to be a lot of time spent on real estate, but it's definitely a juggling act to try to spend enough time with the family, but also having time to spend working on real estate related things. So definitely something I still need to keep working on as far as getting that balance right. But so the real estate investing business, do you work out of your house? I do. Yep. So everything's based out of my house, which helps, but it's also hard with kids screaming and yelling in the background.
Yes. So. Well, yes, when we started this podcast, before I was recording, I was having a completely ridiculous conversation with my 3-year-old, trying to tell him to be quiet. Yeah, he was like, "Absolutely, I'll be quiet," and then proceeds to make a ton of noise. So do you have like a space? Like, do you have like an office space inside your house, or you just work like out amongst the savages there?
For the most part, I have an office space, that a bedroom that I use as my office. I'll make most phone calls and things out of here. If I'm just working on my computer on doing research or something, running numbers, I will maybe be down at the kitchen table or something with the family. But yeah.
Yeah, I think having that little bit of psychological distance that comes from like going into a different room it's actually pretty critical. It's funny. It's like you wouldn't think it would be that big a deal, but it really does kind of help a lot. So I think that's cool. So let's transition a little bit and let's talk about marketing. So I had a couple questions about marketing. One of them is I was wondering if, because your schedule, you find following up to be difficult, right? Because, it's one of the things we've talked about, with online leads specifically, speed of follow-up is really crucial. And you've had success at that, but you have this kind of natural limitation where it's like, hey, if you email me at 10 a.m., I won't necessarily be able to call you back within 2 minutes, right? So Has that been difficult for you, or have you found that to be much of a barrier? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so it's definitely been somewhat of a barrier for me. I am able to take a few phone calls at work on breaks and things, but it's still a lot harder to follow up. You get the website submission, and trying to follow up with them right away gets difficult. So a lot of the follow up happens when I get home from work, and at that point they might have tried calling me or left me a voicemail at 9 or 10 in the morning, and such 4 or 5, 6 hours later when I'm following up, and they've either talked to someone else or they're not answering, or so it's definitely more difficult having a full-time job. It's also hard trying to figure out the follow-up after the initial call as well, just because everything's got to be squeezed into a couple hours after work. So it's definitely a juggling act sometimes I'll get a submission on my website and I'll shoot a text over to them if I see it quick, just to let them know that I'm there. I'll follow up with them later. But that's definitely one of the challenges with a full-time job is follow-up, or getting in contact with sellers at a time that works for them.
Want to find motivated seller leads online, but don't know where to start? Download our free 2019 Motivated Seller Keyword Report today. AdWords nerds have spent over $5 million this year researching the most profitable keywords for finding motivated seller leads. And you can grab these exact keywords when you download our report at www.adwordsnerds.com/keywords.
So let's talk about your marketing kind of stack or whatever you want to do. How are you finding sellers?
Yeah, so I have a few different ways I find them. I do direct mail, so some of the lists are driving for dollars, finding distressed houses out driving, and then as well as have a couple lists of absentee owners, which is a big one for most people. And so I send direct mail to them as well as some ringless voicemail and email. And then on the other online side, I have working on SEO, but I have Google Ads going as well. Good leads and some deals. So
yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, that's how we met, right? You came through the coaching program. It's interesting, and we don't have to, I'm not trying to hype up the coaching program specifically, but I think it's interesting to talk a little bit about your experience of doing the ads yourself and kind of like coming in and learning that process and kind of getting it done, mostly because you have significantly less time than most people do.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's kind of like even more impressive. So what was that like? Was that like a huge jump for you, or was it kind of, you feel like, well, I had the engineering background, maybe that kind of makes it a little bit easier for you to kind of jump in and learn a new system. What was the process like of jumping in and kind of going through the program and learning that stuff to the point where you could apply it and get deals from it?
Yeah. So I started, it would have been about a year ago. I think I went through your first Search, Click, Convert boot camp. And so that's kind of where I got introduced to Google Ads and the whole system and how to set up ads, how to manage the ads as time goes on. And then I joined the REI Marketing Mastery class maybe 5 or 6 months ago, I think it was. And so that's helped jumpstart even or help grow my Google Ads as well as starting SEO and things like that. Google Ads is not super user friendly. So it was definitely helpful to have you there to walk through it and what we're kind of looking for as far as conversion rates and click-through rates and all of that. As you said, it is hard to keep that managed with the time constraint that I have, but you can definitely manage it in small portions of time each month. It doesn't have to be a lot of time put into it, which helps a lot.
Yeah, I think that's actually a big misconception, especially because I think if you think about hiring an agency, like we have an agency, right, works with investors. And so when people hire us, they kind of see our team putting in like obscene amounts of hours or whatever, right? And that's partially because it's like, hey, like, you're hiring a professional team. You're probably spending a significant amount of money on that. That's what you expect. But I think for the average investor who's not maybe spending, they're not spending $10K a month or something like that on ads, you can have a system. And that's like what the course is based around. You can have just kind of a process, checklisted out process that says, hey, here are the most important things you need to do. And that's 90% of it. And you can get it done in a couple hours a month, right? So I think that's a big misconception. And I love that you did deals from that, because I think you're a really good example of someone who came in and really implemented what we taught. So that's awesome. I mean, for your direct mail, are you sending out like the same piece multiple times? Like how do you think of through mailing, and kind of how does your mail process work?
Yeah, so I've kind of changed up my mail process a little bit recently. I'm starting to have more of a systemized approach to it, as far as how I split my list and how I mail to it consistently. Prior to, I'd say I'd get a list from a title company and then send out letters every month and switch between, I'd maybe get 3 or 4 lists and mail it once per quarter or so. Now I've kind of switched it up a little bit to get it more systemized. Here's my list, broken out every couple weeks, sending a new batch of mail, just so it's kind of spread out, because I would send it out at the beginning of the month and I'd get calls the first week and then nothing for 3 weeks until the next batch went out. and then piling on ringless voicemail and email onto that as well, just to keep the touches up. Because as most of you know, I think it's 7 touches before you get the biggest response. And so keeping that consistency up, because things change in life for everyone. Yeah, so I've kind of changed it up recently and just starting to roll that system out, getting more systematized in my direct mail, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. And I think that's actually like a really critical insight. It's both that like, hey, the average, it's just like you said, right? It's like the average sale, I think, happens after the 7th touch point, which is most people barely get beyond 3 or 4. So, obviously for maximizing the amount of deals that you get from anything, that's really critical. And that's actually true of ads. It's true of SEO, right? The more touch points that you have, the more likely that person is to respond. So I always say, like, it's one of the reasons, when we teach this in REI Marketing Mastery, but we also do it in the agency, where we always say, like, hey, it's multi-channel, where the idea is, they see us in search, but they also see us on Facebook, and they might also see us on like weather.com. And hey, if you're sending mail, and over and over again, we're just trying to engineer the situation where they see us a bunch of times, so that when they're ready to go, that we're who they think of and we're the ones that they come to. So there's that. But then I think you also hit on something really important, which is spreading out your pipeline of deals, because so many investors go through this boom and bust cycle. It's like everyone's fear is, I'm not going to get any leads, right? And that's obviously bad. But the flip side of that is like, you get all your leads at once. So it's like you can't respond fast enough, or you drop the ball, or it's just too much work. And so spreading it out in that way, I think is really crucial, especially for someone like you, again, juggling the job and your kids and your business. I mean, I think that's a really, really valuable insight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we're recording this, we have just crossed the barrier of 2020, which is now a brand new year. So I'm curious, man, like you're in this really interesting place. You've had a ton of success. You've gotten deals from your ads. You've gotten deals from all the marketing that you're doing. What's the goal for 2020? Like where do you want to take this thing? Is the goal to quit the job? Is the goal to scale it to a certain point? Like, what do you want this to look like?
Yeah, the main goal is, to quit the full-time job would be great. And that's kind of the long-term goal. This year would be, I'm pushing for this year to quit the job and go full-time real estate. Yeah. As well as, I think I mentioned earlier, my wife and I are both from Minnesota. And so it's all our family is back there. So that's kind of the goal, is to move back there and start real estate there. But keeping my pipeline and systems going in Seattle, since I built that up, I don't want to let that go. So trying to figure out how to do that remotely, as well as getting things started in Minnesota, so that if and when we move back there, that things are already going, as it takes time to build things up in a new market. So those are kind of the goals for this year. Still working on specifics as far as how many deals and things like that for goals this year. But those are the overarching bigger goals that I'm working towards this year.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really exciting, kind of life-changing stuff. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah. And I think I will say, like, I think you have proven yourself to be someone who really seeks out information and acts on it. So I think of all the people I've ever talked to who say like, well, hey, this is my big goal, I think you are definitely going to get there. And I think being an REI Marketing Mastery is great for you too, because it's like, hey, then, if you want to change things, you want to test the Minnesota market, or you want to talk about putting your marketing on autopilot in Seattle, I'll be there to help you do that. The team will be there to help you do that. And there's a really nice community of folks in there. So yeah, man, yeah. I just wanted to tell you, like, I really appreciate having you part of that community. You've been great. And you've been great kind of at every step of the way. So I really appreciate you, and super excited to see where you take Northwest Property Solutions in 2020 and beyond, man. I think that's going to be really exciting.
Thanks. And I appreciated all the help from your side as well.
Yeah, man. Cool. Well, Ryan, it's been great having you. Is there anywhere else online that you want people to come and find you if they want to connect, or is northwestpropertysolutions.com just kind of the best place?
Yeah, that's the best place. And there's a phone number and email on there if you want to reach out.
Cool. All right. Well, everybody go check out northwestpropertysolutions.com. Say hello to Ryan. Ryan Substand, thank you so much for having us, man. Thank you so much for having us. And thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it, dude. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right. Cheers, Ryan.
That's it for this week's episode of the REI Marketing Nerds podcast. Hey, if you are not in our Facebook group, you need to get there. You can go to adwordsnerds.com/group. That's adwordsnerds.com/group. Or just go to Facebook and type in REI Marketing Nerds. You'll find us. I am in there every single day. We're posting trainings, content, answering questions, providing support. We are really trying to make it the absolute most valuable Facebook group for investors anywhere. And I would love for you to be a part of it. So once again, you can go to adwordsnerds.com/group or go on Facebook and type in REI Marketing Nerds. And I would love to have you in there. So I will see you guys next week. Hope you're having an awesome day and hope you have an awesome rest of your week. And I will talk to you very soon.
This is the podcastfactory.com.